Hey, welcome back to the show. Appreciate y'all uh, joining the show and spending time listening to the different stories with the guests I've got on it today. I've got a gentleman who I just heard him on a podcast less than a week ago, and as I was listening to his story, he went from a hero to somebody who was being persecuted and treated in a way that to me is just ridiculous and unfair. And then knowing what he was facing, as someone who's been through the process, I just, brought so many memories flooding back to me of my experience going through the process and the situation. And so I just reached out, and he was gracious enough to agree and to give me some of his time. I know you're very busy, and so I appreciate you being here, Greg.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I kind of looking forward to this. We've emailed some, and I've kind of gotten to know your story a little bit, and it seems like a good fit.
Yeah, well, for those that you're a former police chief in a city in Missouri, and I'm going to let you tell the story, but somebody that took action, without even thinking, and putting, as you've done in your whole career, I'm sure you put other people first and you put yourself in harm's way to do the right thing and to help people out.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I learned early on, one of just one of the traits of law enforcement, really, or at least good law enforcement, is acting without thinking, just having that muscle memory built up to a point where you have to react to certain situations, and you don't think about it until it's done, and then Of course you're in a debriefing, and you fall apart a little bit inside, from whatever. But I was fortunate enough that day that things worked out well as far as the baby went. And then what I did to betray my oath after that was a really bad part. But I'm here, and I'm still walking around in my own house, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I want to share something with you that maybe will help you and also help anybody listening out there. My story, your story, we're nothing special there. Everybody has trials in life. When I was sitting in prison, I got a letter from a lady who knew my parents, and she worked in a church organization with my mother. And the second letter she wrote me, and this lady, I didn't even meet her till about 5 years after I was released from prison. But she wrote me every month, a couple of times. She would send me books. The second letter she wrote me, she told me, she said, "Steve, I don't know what you're going through. I can't imagine what it's like in there. But if you will challenge yourself every night when you lay down," it kind of chokes me up to talk about it. If you will focus on 3 things that day that you have to be grateful for, I think that will benefit you. And at this point, I was probably 2.5 months in, and I was still depressed as hell. I mean, I was messed up mentally. I was just going through the routine that I had to get through the day. But I'll tell you what, once I started to do that, and you've been around long enough, you understand what it does when you focus on other people and gratitude. And we can't be depressed, we can't be angry, we can't be in the victim state, so to speak, when we're in gratitude. And that just shifted everything for me. So I just wanted to share that with you and also everybody listening. But I'd love to, like my audience, I haven't put anything out there yet about your story. I have posted on social media that I hope to have you on soon. But let's start off where whoever it was down the hall that yelled something to get you to take action with, I think maybe a lieutenant or someone else. And then what happened as you were taken off down that hall, what you saw, and then what transpired after that.
Sure. So it was one of my corporals had yelled for me. I was back in my office doing payroll, and he had yelled for me, and then I knew that there are plenty of other department members in the office and in the squad room, For whatever reason, he yelled for me, and I jumped up and ran out to see what was going on. I could tell in his voice, obviously, the stress. And so when I got out in the hallway, he yelled and said, "Chief, there's a baby in a pond down on Doc Henry Road." And so I started running down the hall after him. And I said, "How did it get there?" And he said, "The father." At that time, just after he said that to me, I went past my lieutenant's open door to his office, and I could see in there was a mid-30s man sitting in a chair, unrestrained. And there's just no way to describe it to somebody that's never seen it for them to understand it. But it's a pair of eyes with nothing behind them. There's no soul. There's no nothing. It's just evil. It's just pure evil. And you can just, I've only seen it a few times in my career, but that day there was no mistaking it. And I continued to run down the hall and just had that mental note in my head that this guy's in there unrestrained, and that must be our suspect, and ran out the door after my corporal. And we got in our patrol cars. He got in his and I got in mine. And one of the amazing things about it, on the way to this call, on the way to this pond, we knew what pond it was, knew our route to get there. Wasn't any problem there at all. But one of the amazing things was as we were going to this call, I mean, we were both running crazy fast. I was in front of my corporal. I could hear him on the radio putting out a call for medical to show up at that same location, which was great for him. He did an awesome job. But these cars that were in front of us, all the traffic on that highway just completely got out of our ways, so far ahead of us that neither one of us ever had to hit the brakes. And I've never been on a call like that. Typically you're changing lanes, you're having to slow down and go into oncoming traffic in a safe way, things like that. On this call, we just went straight to it as fast as we could drive.
Every second counted, so.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Me knowing the story, there's to me at least, there's other forces in play here along with your heroic efforts. But anyway,
absolutely.
Go ahead. It was just, it gives me the chills listening to that.
Yeah, it was pretty wild once we got done with everything and actually thought about how it all took place. It was very chilling. It was a little bit scary, but
this was this was winter time, right? Because it was kind of almost iced on a little bit of the pond, right?
Yeah, it was December 17th of 2018. Okay. It was about 22 degrees that day as a high. And this is about 10 o'clock in the morning. So it hadn't really warmed up much. And from the bank out about maybe 2 foot or 3 foot was ice, and then it was water. But we arrived at the scene. Both of us bailed out of our patrol cars and ran down the bank. I remember getting to the edge of that pond. Of course, I'd stripped all kinds of gear off on my way. And I'll tell you a story about cops and bathrooms later that it just makes that into something super simple to do. But when I got to the bank of that pond, my corporal was about, I'd say knee deep in the water by that time. I could see this baby, and at that point the baby was this pure white color like porcelain, and I honestly believed it was a porcelain doll at that point. I thought, man, this guy he's out there. This is not a real baby.
Okay, wow.
And then once I got out in that water, especially as deep as I went, when I grabbed that baby's leg, there was no mistaking it. I knew then it was a human being. I was able to get that baby to my corporal, and my corporal got the baby up on the bank. It took me a little bit of time to get out of that water, but he'd already started CPR on her, and she had the little black curls in her hair. And when I first saw her in the pond, it was just pure white, all except for her head, and it's just these little curls, little dark curls in her hair, and she's face down in the water. Well, he started CPR on her, and when I finally got out of the pond and got up to him, I'm yelling at him and he's yelling at me, and we're both kind of frantic, and I'm sure neither one of us made any sense to each other, but he wasn't having any luck, and he handed the baby off to me. We turned her over where she was on her back in our arms, and I immediately started digging stuff out of her throat to clear the air passage. yeah, I've probably a good 2 handfuls of dirt and mud and grass, moss, that I pulled just out of her throat, and I was all the way down to my knuckles.
Would it have been intentional to get that stuff in there, or was she sucking it up, trying to breathe?
Yeah, she sucked it up trying to breathe. Yeah, panic state, trying to take a deep breath, and yeah, and she, I got her throat cleared out, got the mud wiped out of her eyeballs, and we immediately started back on CPR again. And I worked on her for, I don't know, probably between 1 and 2 minutes at that time, and then all of a sudden we got a whimper.
Gee.
And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of nightmares, from just all kinds of things in my career, not just this, but that's the one that sticks with me for days, is that whimper, and it that was probably the one thing about this whole deal that stayed in my brain. But she let out a little whimper, and I looked up at my corporal, and I thought he was going to fall apart for sure, and I knew I wasn't far from that myself. But we ran her up the bank as fast as we could. He had his patrol car still running, and mine wasn't. So got in the front passenger seat of his patrol car and aimed all the heater vents at the baby, and I set her down in the seat. All she had on was a diaper. She didn't have any color to her yet. She's still pure white, but I'm giving her, as hard as you can anyways. I was giving her chest rubs still and just trying to get her coherent, and paying a lot of attention to her eye movement, so I'd know, what to expect, and how badly damaged she might be. But this whole time we're waiting for a fire department to show up, with EMS, that sort of thing. I just keep trying to get her more coherent, and it wasn't working out. She was fixated on the dash vent or something on the dash, and I wasn't getting any eye movement. And so I stripped down out of everything pretty much. I mean, I'm sure it'd been a sight, but anything that I had that was dry from my uniform, I wrapped her up in and tried to keep her warm, and get the water off of her and stuff. Eventually, we got a little bit of eye movement out of her. I was trying to get her to grip my fingers, things like, I mean, she's 6 months old.
Wow.
And finally we got more signs of life from her. And we were real scared that she was going to go unconscious again, because she just acted like such a tired, baby. But she finally just kind of livened up for us a little bit as she got warmer. And then finally, the fire department showed up. We were on scene. I want to say it was either 14 minutes or 17 minutes before they showed up, before they arrived on scene. And they immediately came over to take custody of her. And that's probably one of the harder parts for me to talk about, because I realize I've only got possession of this child for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes total after getting her out of the pond. But something clicked in my brain, and I wasn't going to let anybody have her. I mean, when they came over to get her, when fire department came over to get her from me, I was pushing people back and just no, I'm not giving her up. And I finally, it finally clicked, that, hey, she needs to go. And I backed off, and they got her on their bus. My corporal, I don't even know what he had done at this time. As soon as they took possession of her from me, I don't even know where he went or what he did or anything. There was a guy that had stopped by in his car. He's just driving down the road, lived down the street from where this pond was. He stopped and he asked, he's like, "Is everything okay?" I'm like, no. And he said, do you need, because he saw I'm soaking wet and half naked. And so he said, "You guys need blankets? You need towels? What you need?" And I said, "Yeah, anything you have." Well, he didn't have anything with him. So he took off and ran back home to his house. He was going to drive back home and get stuff and bring it up to the call. And I mean, that says a lot for the people in that area, the citizens of that city. They're probably some of the, by far the best city, best population in a city that I have ever dealt with.
Was it Greenwood? Is that the name of it?
yeah, Greenwood,
Okay,
Missouri. Yeah.
Wasn't sure.
Probably the most support I've ever seen for any kind of first responders. It's a pretty good place. But once fire department had that baby for, I don't know how long, they probably only had her for 5 minutes. It seemed like an hour to me, but my corporal came back to me and said, hey, she's doing okay. And one of the fire department personnel came with them. They said she's suffering from severe hypothermia, but we think she'll be okay, and we're getting ready to transport. As soon as my corporal walked away, I'd put some of my uniform back on, and I ran hot all the way back to the PD. At that moment, what was in my brain was my lieutenant was in that office, and it's weird the way your brain functions in a critical incident like that. But in my brain, he's in that office alone with this man, and this man is not restrained.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I ran hot all the way back to the police department. And as soon as I got in the parking lot, I bailed out of my patrol car, ran for the public entrance door. Now, when you enter the police department, it goes into a small foyer area. And from there, you have two doors to make entry into the police department. You can either make entry into the door on the left, which went straight into my lieutenant's office, or the one directly in front of you, which would go down a hall, go to the squad room, evidence room, my office, several other offices, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
The only way to get in either one of these doors is to enter a 4-digit code, and there's no possible way to get in otherwise. I was told afterward that both doors were shut, and I had to put a code in to get in there. I don't remember ever putting a code in. My next memory after entering that foyer is feeling somebody kick me, punch me, screaming at me. And I looked down. I was standing over the top of the suspect. I looked down and saw him, all bloody and everything, and realized it's my lieutenant and other officers that have got a hold of me, trying to get me off of them. And I immediately just turned and bolted down the hall to my office, slammed the door shut, and my city clerk had heard some of this noise. She was over by the police department at the time, and so she'd opened up an entryway from City Hall and yelled to see if everything was okay. And so I just opened up my office door, and I looked out at her, and I said, "Look, I resigned. I quit. I'm done. What just happened? I have to resign." And of course, I'm real upset. I'm very upset at that time, crying and things. I just realized what I'd just done to my career,
Right.
And so, of course, she refused and said, "Absolutely not. Said some good things about me, and said, no, we won't let you resign, chief." And then she got my I don't know if she got him on the phone or if he happened to just call me at that moment, but I ended up on the phone with my mayor. And he said the same thing. He said, "No," he goes, "Well," he goes, "this whole city will," he said, "this whole city will stand behind you."
Rally around you.
Yeah. And it just went from there. We were real fortunate. My captain and I used to spend some time trying to figure out what directions we wanted to go with our policies and stuff for mental health. And this really figured into it. And luckily, not even 2 weeks prior to this, we had developed a policy and put it into play, that if an officer is involved in a critical incident like this, somebody from outside, somebody that's not involved with the incident at all, somebody that preferably is off duty completely that day, they get called in. They have to take the ball and run with it and run the show. And my captain was off that day, and we were real fortunate it was that way. He came down, ran the department, got everything set up for my corporal and I to go and do our first counseling session with a counselor that evening. So 7 hours after the incident, we're sitting in with a counselor. That was a good thing, because I had a lot of really bad shit going through my head.
Oh,
but,
I can imagine. Man.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but it worked out, and overall, I just don't know that I would ever truthfully tell somebody that I would change any of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you feel the same as I do, but I believe everything happens for a reason, and, I assume sitting where you are, which is, we're only a couple of, how long ago did you end up with the sentencing and ended up on 5-year probation? That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been
what, 6-8 weeks or something?
Yeah, about 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's still so fresh that, there's still so much unknowns, I assume, and uncertainty. And that's the hardest part. I tell everybody, it's really not a joke, but to me, I guess it is, through my addiction, because I had opiate addiction for 14 years after being diagnosed with Crohn's disease and having a small bowel resection. And, there's a lot of things I did in my addiction, certainly, that broke the law. And so I could have gotten sent to jail, even maybe prison, for things that took place during my addiction. Now, this mortgage fraud case is something totally different. It's ridiculous. But as I look at my life, and once I was in prison, when you have everything taken away from you, it's amazing just how quickly you realize the things that matter most you take for granted, and it just slapped me upside the head. So I still to this day feel like it was a blessing in disguise, even though it was unfair and ridiculous and whatever. It's just something I needed in my life to be able to stop and kind of look at things and get a different perspective, even though deep down, and really if I would do that, I knew those things anyway, but life gets in the way, and you know what I mean? And, and I remember my father-in-law writing me a letter and referencing a scripture and saying, these things shall pass is basically what the scripture said. Man, when you're sitting in it, where you're so new in the situation right now, that doesn't seem like that will ever happen.
No, it doesn't.
The days are so long, whether it's in your situation, I imagine they're pretty long. In prison, they're extremely long, but I found myself just the last few months, several times saying to my wife, it just seems like it was Friday, yesterday in a sense, because time just flies, but when you're put in situations like you're going through, what I went through, it's just crazy how things change. But as crappy as it sounds, I believe there's a purpose, maybe obviously you probably don't know for sure, but I truly believe, and, regardless, my heart aches for you, brother. That's all I can say.
I appreciate it. Definitely. I thought, my complete retirement was going to be from law enforcement, and I would be probably, in that chief's position for that city for several more years is what I believed. And everybody believed that. That's what we all thought. We accomplished so many good things with that city, and that city accomplished so many good things. And I'm not going to say that the police department put the city on the map, but it most definitely helped a lot. We ended up being the top 5 safest cities in the state of Missouri 2 years in a row. And then our third year, which was 2017, we were the safest city in the entire state, regardless of population. Wow. And so, and that had never happened to that city before. It had never been in the top 5, never been in the top 10. And so that was a big accomplishment for the guys that work for me. I mean, if people pat me on the back about that kind of thing, and I'll tell you right now, it's not me. It's just being fortunate in the people that I hired, and that's 100% what it is.
Well, I agree. I heard, you on the podcast. I know the support you had, like you said, from the mayor and other people. I've read a bunch of articles online, and, I would agree with you, but at the same time, a great leader obviously makes people better, and, don't shortchange yourself, man. But I get it. It is critical, because whether it's in business or as a chief and all those under you that you're, leading, we're only as good as the people around us,
Yeah, true. And and I think it's easy to excel and do a really good job when you're doing something that you just absolutely love doing.
Bingo.
You know, and that was my calling, and that was the only thing in life I'd ever planned to do. And yeah, so yeah, it's I'm not going to say it's dark days now, but they're definitely not anywhere near as bright. I'm still trying to figure out what to do, and you know, working a job that yeah, my poor wife. I come home and gripe all night long about where I work and the work I do, and and it's not. In the beginning, I felt kind of belittled. You know, going to work and doing something other than law enforcement.
Yep.
But you know, I've gotten past that part and kind of feel shitty about myself for feeling that way. But I still, man, you know, it's the biggest thing with the Justice Department when they indicted me and when I was charged and then convicted, their number one goal was that I never ever be a cop again.
So backwards. Yeah.
Well, and they've locked that in now since.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm a convicted felon now, so you know.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they got their way with that, but I'm trying to find another way to where I can have a comfortable life and at least be proud of what I'm doing, you know.
Right.
And that's a pretty tough struggle.
I'm confident it'll happen. I really believe that. I mean, you know, we can talk, you know, after and other times, because I really believe there's some things where you're going to make a bigger impact down the road, you know. Why? So after that took place, you know, they didn't want you to resign, but then why did the feds get involved?
So, and I can tell you the entire story off camera, but I'll be a little edited on this. Basically, with me I'd been the chief for a little over 6 years at that point, and I didn't have a good working relationship with a prosecutor there in the county. And now there were prosecutors there in the county I did have a good working relationship with. Unfortunately, this was the head prosecutor, and I didn't have a good relationship with that person. And it all stemmed from a call that we had with a dog bite and some things that happened. But anyways, when all this took place and it got to the county level, which really is state, they started an investigation with Highway Patrol. I think it was all of a week, not even that, maybe. And then they kicked it up.
Someone had it out, basically, in a sense, a little bit. Or
I think they saw an opportunity.
Yeah, I have my opinions, but I'll hold them so I hear from the horse's mouth. But
yeah,
I know how it works.
They saw an opportunity. Yeah, I think there was an opportunity seen there to do some damage, and it was taken. You know, and it got kicked up to the federal level pretty fast. And
surprised they didn't kick it back. Well, not actually, but you know, in the real world, the way law and order should be, that's a whole nother discussion. You know, I've been down that rabbit hole very deep, even after going through what I've been through. But you know, it's someone make themselves look better if they can prosecute a chief. You know, exactly. Crap like that. The political stuff that's involved is so sick.
Well, and I try not to delve off on the political side too much, but it's a very the Kansas City area, especially Jackson County, Missouri, which is Kansas City, Missouri. The political view over there is very liberal, very liberal. And so, you know, law enforcement was in a decent light, and I think they were taking a shot to knock it down. But you know, I went. That was my last day in my office, last day in my police department. After I saw the counselor that evening, the counselor, my captain did such a good job tracking these people down for us and getting us to them. But the counselor actually was retired law enforcement, had like
Oh,
a
wow.
28-year career. So, you know, it was a very good thing to be able to sit in there and talk to somebody that's been there and done that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Yep.
yeah, I think it made a huge difference with my mindset, you know, because I wasn't just listening to words, you know.
Exactly.
I
You
yeah,
know,
I
they
kind
could
of
relate. They could understand. They've been in your shoes in a way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
That's
made
why
it
I feel
easy.
strongly about, you know, people that go to addiction counseling and things like that. You know, if they haven't been addicts themselves, they just still not get it. You know,
Right,
it
exactly.
doesn't make sense why you do such dumb things, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely have to have been there in order to really, I think, in order to really help somebody that needs it. And you know, like I said, I had some pretty dark thoughts going through my head.
And that.
Yeah, and you know, after talking to that counselor that evening, it did help some. And then you know, just a few short weeks later, the FBI showed up at my door at home and served me with my indictment. My FOP attorney was I'm not even sure how to describe it, but I immediately found out that he had already bailed on me when he found out it was going to go federal. So I hired my own attorney, spent a ton of money on that guy, and he did an excellent job. Great attorney. He actually was a prior prosecutor for the Justice Department. So
Oh, wow.
I don't know that I could have. Yeah, I don't think I could have found a better attorney. But you know, I went through a lot. Just trying to get my head wrapped around things and figure out what to do. And I isolated myself really, really bad, and alienated my family, my friends, everybody, my officers, everybody. You know, probably the only person that I spoke to on a regular basis was my mayor. That guy never let go. He kept texting me and calling me, and
That's cool.
wanted to make sure I was good. Yeah. And then you know, I started getting handwritten mail in my mailbox from people in the city that were supporting me, you know, sending me, you know, gift cards and, you know, and things like that, and get well soon, and you know, just whatever they could send. And that was an amazing feeling. That probably made me cry more than any part of that baby. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, I can't say enough good things about the citizens in that place. But we ended up talking to the attorney, got everything figured out with him. He wanted to go to trial with it. You know, he was really excited about that. Then Justice Department, you know, it took over 2 years.
Yep.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in those 2 years, we had an election. We had all kinds of things happen, you know, and excuse me, the outlook against law enforcement got pretty bleak, and because of the negative outlook on law enforcement throughout those 2 years, I got real worried about my chances with the jury, and so I made the decision. Yeah, I just
federal case, man. Going to trials, you know how risky that scared the shit out of you. I mean,
absolutely.
First of all, you know you're not getting a fair shake. They can do things on the prosecutor's side that we can't do. You can't. I mean, I believe you cannot get a truthful, fair trial the way the system is set up. That's what I believe. That's what I experienced, and I was actually looking to fire my attorney. And my dad had a neighbor who defended, I don't know if you'd have ever heard of this case, but in Utah, it was the Lafferty brothers. You know, I can't remember if they were serial killers or serial rapists, but, you know, he defended them, you know, so he was a top criminal defense attorney. So my dad called him to see, before I fired this guy, if he'd take my case. And he told my dad, he said, sure, I haven't been practicing criminal defense for 9 years because I couldn't give my clients a fair defense. I mean, so it's just like,
well, that says a lot.
Then you're looking at the maximum sentence, you know, if you lose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like 96% of federal cases plea out, the 4% go to trial, only 1% ever is found not guilty.
Isn't that crazy?
Those are odds you do not want to. I mean, that right there tells you something's not right.
Yeah. definitely. Yeah. I don't, I wouldn't get on a sailboat that had a, 90%
Yeah.
chance of sinking,
Right.
so.
So now you're faced with that massive dilemma that I was just like you. I was 11 days from trial
Oh, wow.
and I was going, but I was scared to death, and then my attorney calls me. Then I won't get into the story how that'll happen, but he's telling me on a Sunday morning, we're meeting with the feds in downtown Salt Lake City tonight at 7 p.m. to give them your plea.
Yeah.
And I freaked out. I went to my folks and I didn't know what to do, but I just knew, I had to know before I left their house that was the right thing, But anyways, yeah, of course, you're faced with that situation. And now you're going to go say, yeah, I'm guilty. Yeah, you did whatever, I don't know the psychology behind it. Maybe someone's talked to you about it, but it sounds like you kind of, I don't know if blacked out's the right word, but, once you entered that building, things just left your mind in a sense. I mean, you probably don't even understand it. Maybe you've had people explain it, how that happens. But to do what you did and be so heroic and then do that, most people aren't going to say it's okay, but they certainly understand, and that's why this to me made no sense. Yes, you need to be accountable. We all do for our actions, but to take you through this and to prosecute you on a federal indictment just is, to me, it's sick.
Well, and it's really strange as far as the psychology behind it all and what you do, in your own mind to cope with things. And, one of the biggest things with me, I knew what I did and I knew how it all happened simply because, the FBI the prosecutors ended up having my attorney and I go to a boardroom in the Justice Center and sit with them and watch the body camera video because my lieutenant had his body camera. Yeah, he had his body camera on the whole time. And I'll tell you, that was one of the strangest things that I've ever experienced.
I didn't think it was you in a sense, other if you hadn't seen it.
Exactly. Yeah. Just watching yourself do things that you have no recollection of.
Yeah.
And it's just, but I don't know how to say this correctly. But I know when I think back to what I saw on that body camera footage and I think back to that whole day, I can't say that I've got remorse for what happened. I have remorse for betraying my oath. That's where my heart breaks at is because all through my career, and I think probably a lot of officers they go through the same thing where, in your career, you have an instinct to do something. You go to a domestic where a 105-pound girl is almost beaten to death by a 260-pound man, and of course, you in your brain you're like, well, he needs to get what he gave. That's right. What you think, but you stop and you go, well, wait a minute, I took an oath. I've got this career. And so you go about things in a professional manner and do it the way it's supposed to be done. And, you spend a lot of years doing it that way. And then all of a sudden this happens and it almost feels like it's not in your control in a way, mm-hmm. But the betrayal of my oath, was the heartbreak in this whole thing for me. Definitely.
Oh yeah. Cause I could tell just the things I've read and what I've listened to that there's no doubt you operated with the highest of integrity in your career, And so that had to just be so strange, to go through that happened, but who knows why, but like I say, there's always a reason, but hopefully it'll manifest itself sooner than later, obviously, but
Right. Yeah. Well, we ended up, at my suggestion, we went ahead and contacted the Justice Department and did a plea deal. The original plea was going to be, I was going to plead guilty in exchange for 24 months of probation. Originally, there was going to be a fine that would have to be paid along with restitution to the father of the baby.
Wrong.
Yeah, and in my plea hearing, in the hearing that I had to see if they would accept the plea, the judge had brought that up and talked about restitution, and that just put me in a whole different mindset, But when we did the sentencing hearing, they accepted the plea, and when we did the sentencing hearing, the judge, he sentenced me to 5 years of federal probation, but there were no fines and no restitution.
Oh,
yeah, and so I don't want the probation either, of course, but
it's such a pain.
yeah, I feel very fortunate, very fortunate
Yeah.
with what I've got, and so I just can't use a word like happy or pleased, but I do feel
Right.
fortunate,
Yeah.
but
Well, that's
so,
the
yeah,
thing. Regardless of that stuff, bottom line, just like me, we got an F on our head the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what's messed up.
Yeah, and it definitely changes course. Changed my course for sure, and it sounds like it changed yours. And
oh yeah,
and it's where do you go from here? That's probably the biggest question, And I got to tell you, I shortly after I did my plea hearing, I was actually living with my son at that time, because the relationship I was in dissolved extremely fast. During my lunch break from work is when it dissolved. I was working for a dealership there in Kansas City, and just trying to make money, make ends meet, pay bills, and the relationship dissolved in text messaging. And during my lunch break, and we'd been together for 12 plus years and lived together and everything else. And I was told I need to find a place to live and things. So I ended up. I went right back to that dark place, probably worse than.
Yeah.
And so long story short, I became very fortunate, and the plan that I had when I left work during my lunch break after receiving those text messages was suicide. That was 100% my plan, and there was no way I was going to do it, and that was the end of it. And I ended up driving around trying to I wanted to find an empty parking spot, empty parking lot to go to where I wasn't going to be bothered,
Yeah.
But the parking lot that I ended up in, unbeknownst to me, was the parking lot right next to an emergency room of a hospital. But if you saw this parking lot, you wouldn't believe that's what it is. Well, I ended up in this parking lot, and there was a nurse coming off duty, and she saw me and came over and just said, "Hey, you okay?" And
wow,
I just fell apart. I lost
bet.
it, and before I knew it, she had gotten me into the emergency room, and someone else in there asked me if I wanted to go ahead and possibly commit myself, and
yeah.
I said, yeah, at this point, I think that's the best thing to do. And so I spent 8 days Signature Psychiatric there. And I was in with, a lot of people going through rehab because of alcohol or drugs. And then, of course, the mental health side, which was my side, we were all just together.
Yeah.
I met some people that I'll be friends with for the rest of my life. There's no doubt. It's amazing the bond that you create with people in a place like that. And it was so unexpected. But
exactly.
To be honest with you, I think the people in there that I was in there with probably helped me more than the staff themselves.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah. There was a good brotherhood there for sure, and they had
that's so cool.
they had a valor program in the same building, and they came and interviewed me for the valor program, which was military and law enforcement, that kind of thing. And they accepted me, wanted me in the valor program, and then I found out my insurance wouldn't pay for it. So
Jeez.
That was shot. I couldn't do that. But I became friends with some of the guys in that valor program, just from the interviews and things, and friendships I still have today. So, I gained something from it, but
I'll say, wow,
God
works in mysterious ways. I mean, how many times could you go to that parking lot, do you think, and not have anyone walk and see you or have
Oh,
someone
exactly.
see you, but not be the type that come over and check.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
man, the stars lined up.
Yeah, I agree.
Incredible.
Yeah, and it's, you
Wow.
know, yeah, I know, I definitely feel like there was some intervention there.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, you know, when I got out of that place, you know, I had created a Facebook profile, hadn't been on Facebook in years and years, and I ended up with so many people giving support, you know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, just sending me messages and stuff. And man, it was a really cool thing. I answered every single message I ever got, and I felt I felt I felt proud, you know, for a little while,
Yeah.
you know, and that was a good thing. I hadn't felt that for in a bit, and then I ended up getting a message from a woman in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, and she said that all she said in her message is, "Hey, I support you. I would have done the same thing." It was something along those lines, and I saw where she was from. Well, I had ties to that area through a buddy of mine, and so we started having a conversation. And to make a long story short, 3 weeks later, we got married.
Oh my heck. Congratulations. I hadn't read that, but I've been on your Facebook page and
Yeah,
I've read a lot of that is incredible.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It was a whirlwind for sure. Yeah, 3 weeks,
That's
and
cool.
yep, got married. I moved down here to Broken Arrow, and
Oh man, that's cool.
yeah, it's been better every day.
Well,
Yeah.
for those skeptics out there that think that's nuts, after 3 weeks, my parents knew each other for 2 weeks when my dad got engaged. And then he went back to dental school for 3 months, came back and got married. They didn't even know each other basically when they got married. And they both passed away a few years back. I think 56 years or something like that.
Wow.
So,
No,
when it's
when
right,
it's
it's
right,
right,
it's right.
man. Amen.
Yeah,
Bingo. Jeez.
for sure. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Well, man,
So
this has been awesome. I'm gonna ask you one tough question here,
yeah,
and I'll let you go. And I say tough because maybe, only because, it's still pretty fresh where you're at. And, but no, I don't know, just say what's in your heart, which I believe you would anyway. Anybody that's facing a very difficult situation that maybe is right in the middle of it, what advice maybe could you give anybody?
Get you a great big bumper sticker, paste it right across your forehead, and look in the mirror, and that bumper sticker is going to say, "It ain't over till it's over." And
Yeah.
that's not our choice. It's not our choice when it's over. We just, we don't quit. You can never ever quit.
That's it.
Yeah.
One of my biggest struggles, was pride. I was the guy used to helping out, and all of a sudden I needed help and I didn't want to take it, and yeah, if I could do things over with my situation, the legal side and going through it, man, I would have asked a lot more questions and found some people that have been through it, because I made some dumb choices. You talked about getting out of that restitution. I'm still stuck with that crap, I think for another 7 years or something.
Oh wow.
It's just a joke,
Yeah. It's you have to believe though. I mean, or at least I would guess in your situation, just like mine, I've developed this, and I've never had this in my life, but I do now. Definitely, I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason.
Yep.
You know, you're not driving in a straight line. You're
Yeah.
getting bounced around corners and everything else, and there's a reason behind it, and
Amen.
you just got to keep going.
Yep. Well, I mean, you've obviously had things happen just that we've talked about that would not have happened without this experience you've been through, particularly your marriage, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And the marriage was a big surprise. Yeah, but I gained some other things too. And, like I said, I alienated my family and my friends. And,
yep.
that wasn't just for a few months, that was for a couple of years. And,
Right.
That built some hardships up. And, I was fortunate enough that my oldest daughter ended up inviting myself and my new wife up for Christmas with her and her kids. And so I got to go and see,
Well,
my
that's
two
cool.
grandkids.
Grandkids.
Yeah, stay the night at her house. And so everything's coming back around. And
Things seem to do that, as long as you just hang in there, like you said, just don't quit, man. Don't give up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like you, there was times I was suicidal too. And, I don't know how I got through those situations, but I did, because it gets so dark. You just don't think you could get any better,
Oh, yeah.
But the battle is 100% inside our heads. That's the toughest thing we have, tougher than any federal prosecutor, tougher than anything they can dish at it. It's what we allow to go on, and then what we grab onto and build stories on top of and just spiral. And when I've sat in your shoes, when you isolate, that's the worst thing you can do, because then you're alone all the time with just you and those damn thoughts.
Yep.
And I can just tell, brother, you're a hell of a guy. You're obviously, a guy with character and integrity, and you got a purpose. And, with what you've been through and what I've listened to, you're going to help a lot of people.
Well, I hope you're right. I do. I hope you're right. And that's my intention. That if I can't be, if I can't be part of law enforcement anymore, then I really feel like my next calling is this mental health side, and trying to help with that and find some ways to battle that
in law enforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where you can make the biggest impact. Because like you said earlier, that counselor could relate to you. Those guys going through the mental health and PTSD and all that, you're going to relate to them. To me, I feel that coming big time.
Yeah. I just, long as I can figure out how to do it and pay bills and, hopefully really make some kind of difference still, that would be in my mind right now, that would be monumental for me.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'm going to be interesting to see where you're at in just 6 months and a year, because I think it's going to be pretty cool to watch. Honestly, it's not, it's not easy. It never is, but that. And as long as you just keep fighting, it'll happen. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I agree. And you just can't quit. You just can't.
Yep. Well, and I'm a huge believer too, like we said, no accidents, but I'm a huge believer in what we think about comes about. Where focus, where focus goes, energy flows. It's all that kind of stuff. Whatever you want to call it, people can think it's woo, they can think it's crazy, but like I told you early on, I was messed up for 8 of the last 11 and a half years since I was out of prison, meaning I was just getting by and struggling every day, just like say to pay bills. Had no purpose, really. I had ideas of what I thought I wanted to do and things, but that confidence isn't there, and I just kept fighting, and, I just wouldn't give up. And, once I started getting some coaches, I started being around, people that were successful, because I was extremely successful before I crashed and burned. And it's interesting how we forget. I think that's where the struggle came with me, is regardless of how we individually find success, that doesn't have to be financial. I'm just talking life happiness. That, to me, that's the goal, is peace and happiness. Life's tough, man. If we can reach that, that is worth more than any amount of money, but I did pretty well, but I forgot the hard work that went into it. So as I'm on the backside of my situation, I just expected to happen overnight. And so I just, wouldn't stick with things, and it's just messed up. But it was that whole mental thing. So as I surrounded myself with other successful people, got a few coaches. It was literally about 3 years ago. I call it a conscious self-creation statement. And that's where I literally just wrote down everything I wanted in my life. And then I just said it as if, I am successful. I am happy. I'm a winner, because I had to rewire my mind, because I lost my confidence. And that's the worst part of it, and I got to the point where I memorized this, and I would say it every morning as soon as I stepped into the shower. That's just what triggered my memory to remember for whatever reason. And, it's 3 years ago. and it's not always, it's not about things, because even though that's part of it, I wanted to have the house where my wife wanted again, and had the security where the family could all be there, and grandkids when they come, without us feeling like we're on top of each other, and and this and that, and everything other than two things that are included has manifested in my life. And I can't honestly say there's anything other than that's just what I kept thinking and pushing out there. Of course you got to work hard too. It's not just
Right.
going to happen, but and it's all about, just focused on every part of life. Cause we get so caught in thinking we're getting caught in that hamster wheel, just that grind.
Right.
And so we don't ever get to just have that peace and happiness, but it's there. It's just not easy to get, but it's there, and anything I can do, like I said, at any time, man, just reach out, let me know. And I'm
I appreciate that.
happy, whether it's just chatting or anything else, and I just have this feeling you just got so much to offer that, it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen sooner than you think.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
I'm not only pulling for you, I'm praying for you, brother. Cause I just think, I don't know your profession. I've got some buddies and an old neighbor that was a cop. In fact, I remember his house got shot up. I come home from work one day and, a bunch of cop cars are checking things out. And I don't understand, obviously, all of that as far as being in your shoes. But there's no doubt that there's a lot of people that I don't know if pride's the right thing, but that's got to be part of it, that aren't willing to speak up, that need help. And with what this country's gone through in the last 2 years, it's only magnified, in my opinion. And so I think there's just so much that you're going to be able to do.
Well, there's definitely a stigma, when you enter into that profession, and I'm sure it's that way with a lot of first responders, not just law enforcement, but I know with me especially, a lot of it was, so what, you had a nightmare last night, you're going to go and battle evil again today. So pull yourself up by your bootstraps and let's get after it, and you learn to tuck things away in a little box. Yep. in your mind, and then pretty soon, before you know it, your mind is nothing but a bunch of boxes, and it's very dangerous, because man, if you don't let things out, it's
one
gonna
day
happen. It's
all going to come out.
Exactly. Sure is. Yeah.
It's interesting how, as human beings, my dad said this to me, and he used to give me the crap about it. We worry so much about changing the oil in our car and things, but why do we not take the time to, he used to say, get a checkup from the neck up? Why do we have a stigma around it? That's so messed up. We all have it, and we're just programmed to, to think that that's weak,
And weak is the word. I mean, that's 100%. You don't want to show weakness in front of other officers, especially if you have rank. You definitely don't. And because these guys are dependent on you to make the decisions that they believe in and they trust. Yeah. So you certainly don't want to end up being part of the rubber gun squad. But man, it's I think a big change is coming for not just law enforcement, but for all first responders in the mental health side. There has to be relief, has to be something done, and that's kind of what I've geared myself toward. Is trying to find a way to make that happen.
I think you're the guy that's going to lead that front. So awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I look forward to staying in touch, and if people want to reach out, your Facebook still active? Where can people reach you?
It is, yeah. I by my email or Facebook, either one. My Facebook, it's just my name, Greg Hallgrimson, and then my email is G, and then my last name, Hallgrimson 1969 at iCloud.com. And I'd awesome. Love to hear from people. And I've had a few people reach out that had some amazing stories, and we're running through some problems in their mind like I did, and I really took pride in trying to help them. That felt very good awesome. To me.
Amen. Yeah. no matter what human being it is, there's nothing better, no better feeling than doing something that helps somebody else, you know?
I agree.
If I could just do that the rest of my life, I'd be totally happy. I'd be on cloud nine, you know?
Oh,
So-
yeah, definitely. And I started my own YouTube channel, and I didn't do a very good job, but I built a website. I was a rookie at that, but it's Chiefs Chronicles is the YouTube channel and the website. And I've got some contact information on that website, you know, just for first responders as far as mental health side.
Right. I'll put all this in the show notes too, so people don't have, you haven't been able to write something down. I'll have your email, you know, Facebook link, and also the Chief Chronicles link as well. So
I appreciate that.
oh, you bet, man. All right. Well, hope you have a great night and a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. I know you're busy, and so thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Yep. Have a good night.